We're delving into the haunting world of Sati handprints, a practice so chilling, so utterly devastating, that it'll make your blood run cold. Picture this: a scorching hot day in 18th century India. The air is thick with the scent of incense and the sound of wailing. A crowd gathers, their faces a mix of reverence and horror. At the center of it all stands a woman, her eyes hollow with grief, her body adorned with jewelry and vibrant fabrics. But make no mistake, this is no celebration. This woman is about to embark on her final journey, a journey that will end in flames. Now I know what you're thinking. What in the world are you talking about? Well, my friends, we're talking about Sati, the now banned practice where widows would immolate themselves on their husband's funeral pyre. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Before these women would make their final, fatal leap into the flames, they would leave behind a chilling reminder of their existence, their handprints. Whispers. Can you imagine it? The heat of the pyre already licking at your skin, the smoke stinging your eyes, and yet, in those final moments, you press your hands against a wall, leaving behind a stark reminder of your existence. It's enough to make your skin crawl, isn't it? Now, let's rewind a bit. Sati, derived from the Sanskrit word sat meaning true or good, was a practice that dates back centuries in the Indian subcontinent. The earliest known reference to it comes from the 4th century BCE, in the Greek Chronicles of India by Aristobulus of Cassandreia. But it wasn't until the medieval period that this practice really took hold, particularly in regions like Rajasthan and Bengal. The origins of this practice are shrouded in myth and legend. Some say it started with the goddess Sati, who immolated herself to protest her father's treatment of her husband, Lord Shiva. Others claim it began as a way for women to avoid being captured and enslaved by invading armies. But whatever its origins, by the time the British arrived in India, Sati had become a horrifying reality for many widows. Now, let's talk about these handprints. Voice drops to a whisper. They're not just any handprints. They're a final, desperate attempt to leave a mark on the world. These women, often young and sometimes even children, would dip their hands in a mixture of turmeric and vermilion, colors associated with married women in Hindu culture, and press them against the gates of their homes or on the walls near the cremation ground. Can you picture it? The vibrant red and yellow handprints stark against the pale walls, a silent scream echoing through time. These prints weren't just a goodbye. They were a testament to existence, a final act of defiance against a society that saw them as worthless without their husbands. Voice rises in intensity. But here's where it gets even more bone-chilling. These handprints weren't just left by willing participants. Oh no, my friends. Many women were forced or coerced into Sati. Imagine the terror, the desperation in those final moments. The handprints of these women weren't just memorials, they were silent accusations, forever pointing at the society that condemned them to die. Now, you might be wondering, how widespread was this practice? Well, brace yourselves because the numbers are staggering. According to Bengal Sati regulation, which was passed in 1829 by the then Governor-General of India, Lord William Bentinck, in Bengal alone, there were 8,134 reported cases of Sati between 1815 and 1828. That's an average of 570 women burning to death each year in just one region of India. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Some historians argue that these numbers are actually underreported. Many cases of Sati, especially in rural areas, went unrecorded. The true number of women who left their handprints before being consumed by flames could be much, much higher. Deep breath. Now, let's take a moment to really let that sink in. Hundreds, possibly thousands of women, year after year, leaving their final mark on the world in the most horrifying way possible. It's enough to make your stomach churn, isn't it? But wait, there's more. The practice of Sati wasn't just accepted. In some circles it was celebrated. Women who committed Sati were often venerated as saints. Temples were built in their honor, and their handprints became objects of worship. Can you believe it? The very marks left by women in their final moments of terror and pain became symbols of devotion. Voice drops to a whisper. Now, imagine you're walking through an old fortress in Rajasthan. The air is thick with history, the walls weathered by time. And there, on a gate, you see them. Handprints. Dozens of them, some faded, some still vibrant, each one telling a story of a life cut short. This isn't just imagination, folks. These handprints still exist today, silent witnesses to a brutal practice. One such place is the Mehrangarh Fort in Jodhpur, Rajasthan. On its loha pole, or iron gate, you can still see these haunting reminders of Sati. 15 handprints, accompanied by the tika, or the distinctive vermilion mark worn by married Hindu women. Each of these represents a queen who committed Sati, with the last one dating back to 1843. Voice rises. But here's where it gets even more chilling. These handprints aren't just historical curiosities. For some, they're still objects of worship. Even today, people leave offerings at these handprints, praying for blessings from these long-dead women. It's a stark reminder of how deeply ingrained this practice was in some parts of society. Now, you might be thinking, surely this doesn't happen anymore, right? Well, I hate to break it to you, but while Sati was officially banned in 1829 by the British and again in independent India in 1987, isolated incidents have still occurred in recent years. Voice drops to a whisper. In 1987, in a village in Rajasthan, an 18-year-old woman named Roop Kanwar was burned alive on her husband's funeral pyre. The incident shocked the nation and led to the passage of the Rajasthan Sati Prevention Act. But even this wasn't the end. In 2006, another case was reported in Madhya Pradesh. In 2008, a 75-year-old woman allegedly committed Sati in Chhattisgarh. Voice rises in intensity. Can you imagine it? In our modern world of smartphones and space travel, women are still dying in this horrific way. It's enough to make your head spin, isn't it? But let's go back to those handprints. They're not just reminders of death. They're reminders of lives unlived. Each handprint represents a woman who might have gone on to be a mother, a grandmother, a leader, an artist. Instead, their potential was reduced to a colorful smear on a wall. Deep breath. Now, I want you to really picture this. Imagine a young woman, maybe 16 or 17 years old. She's just lost her husband, maybe to disease or war. She's grieving, scared, unsure of her future. And then she's told that her only option, her duty, is to join her husband in death. Can you feel the terror, the desperation? This young woman is dressed in her finest clothes, adorned with jewelry. But this isn't a celebration. It's a funeral. Her funeral. As she's led to the pyre, she's given a mixture of turmeric and vermilion. With shaking hands, she presses her palms into the mixture and then against a wall. It's her last act in this world, her final statement. I was here. I existed. Voice drops to a whisper. And then, in a matter of minutes, she's gone. Consumed by flames, reduced to ashes. All that's left are those handprints, a stark reminder of a life cut short. But here's where it gets even more twisted. These handprints weren't just memorials. They were often used as propaganda. They were held up as examples of wifely devotion, of the ultimate sacrifice. Can you believe it? A woman's horrific death was used to reinforce the very system that killed her. Now let's talk about the psychological impact of these handprints. Imagine being a young girl, growing up seeing these handprints on the walls of your town, knowing that one day, if your husband dies before you, this could be your fate. The handprints serve as a constant reminder, a looming threat. It's psychological warfare, plain and simple. Voice rises. But here's the thing, folks. These handprints didn't just affect the women who left them. They left an indelible mark on society as a whole. They reinforced the idea that a woman's worth was tied to her husband, that her life was expendable. The impact of this mindset can still be felt today in many parts of the world. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is all in the past, right? We've moved beyond this. Well, yes and no. While sati itself is rare now, the mindset that allowed it to flourish still exists in many forms. From honor killings to domestic violence, the idea that a woman's life is worth less than a man's is still prevalent in many societies. Deep breath. But let's go back to those handprints for a moment. They're not just symbols of oppression. In a twisted way, they're also symbols of resistance. Each handprint is a statement. I was here. I existed. Remember me. In their final moments, these women ensured that they wouldn't be forgotten. And they haven't been. Today, these handprints serve as powerful reminders of the horrors of the past. They're studied by historians, anthropologists, and social scientists. They're used in education to teach about gender inequality and human rights. In a way, these women's final acts have become tools for change. Voice drops to a whisper. But here's the most chilling part. We don't know the stories behind most of these handprints. We don't know the names of the women who left them, their ages, their dreams, their fears. They've been reduced to anonymous marks on a wall. And that perhaps is the greatest tragedy of all. Now, imagine walking through a museum and seeing these handprints preserved behind glass. Each one a life, each one a story, each one a tragedy. It's enough to take your breath away, isn't it? But here's where it gets even more intense. These handprints aren't just historical artifacts. They're reminders of the ongoing struggle for women's rights around the world. In many countries, women are still treated as second-class citizens, their lives valued less than men's. The handprints of Sati serve as a stark warning of what can happen when society devalues women's lives. Voice rises in intensity. And let's not forget, folks, that for every handprint we can see, there are countless others that have been lost to time. Women who died without leaving even this small mark on the world. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? But here's a glimmer of hope in all this darkness. Today, these handprints are being reclaimed. Artists and activists are using the imagery of Sati handprints to raise awareness about violence against women. They're turning a symbol of oppression into a call for change. Deep breath. Now, I want you to imagine something. Imagine a world where every girl grows up knowing that her life has value, that she has the right to live and thrive regardless of her marital status. Imagine a world where the only handprints on walls are those of children playing. It seems like a dream, doesn't it? But it's a dream worth fighting for. As we come to the end of this journey, I want you to take a moment. Think about those handprints. Think about the women who left them. And think about what you can do to ensure that no more women have to leave such desperate final marks on the world. Voice drops to a whisper. The handprints of Sati are more than just historical curiosities. They're a challenge to all of us, a challenge to create a world where every life is valued, where no one is forced to make such a terrible choice. They're a reminder that the past is never truly past, that we must remain vigilant against injustice and oppression. And so, my friends, as we end this podcast, I leave you with this thought. The next time you see a handprint, whether it's a child's painting or a prehistoric cave drawing, remember the handprints of Sati. Remember the women who left them. And remember that we all have the power to shape the world, to leave our mark in a way that uplifts rather than destroys. Deep breath. Thank you for joining me on this intense journey. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your mind sharp, and your hearts compassionate. The stories of the past have much to teach us if only we're willing to listen.